we have a new entry into the comic book space, and I am pretty excited. It's not often that something comes along in the comic space brand new that excites people such as myself. When I was a teenager, a young man, Image Comics came about. It was the work of artists like Todd McFarlane, Brett Booth, Jim Lee. I know I'm missing some. There's a bunch of names I'm missing. Scott Williams. What's another one? Man, there's a there's a couple names I'm forgetting, but a couple artists that worked for both DC and Marvel branched off to start their own thing. They had ideas, they wanted new characters. DC and Marvel tends to get kind of stale because they get stuck in, I don't really know what to call it. They get stuck in this continual loop of rehashing, rebooting the same characters over and over again. And they do universe reboots, multiverse reboots, and they just keep doing that, never really bringing many new things to the stage. So a bunch of these artists branched off to start Image Comics. It was great. It produced some of the greatest comic books at that time. Wildcats, I loved Wildcats. Cyberforce, Spawn. Spawn even got a movie. And what's crazy is the speed at which Image Comics moved into the space and really gained a foothold. Man, it was very fast. Comic books sold more back then, and people had more of a huge following. Image Comics is actually where The Walking Dead comes from. And I didn't even know that. I stopped reading Image Comics years ago. I stopped collecting for a long time, many years, for several reasons. One, I entered the military, was traveling. Before I got to my first duty station, I was in Texas for a little bit after basic training in tech school. Then I came to Florida, just got busy. Then I got married, started a family, kids, and just really didn't get back to collecting. Got divorced, started a traveling job, whole journey. And then I did that traveling job for 10 years. About 4 years in, I was like, you know what? I'm going to get back to comic books because I kind of just neglected that, forgot about it. You may not be able to see it behind me. I got three blue crates filled with comic books. I would have had much more than that had I continued collecting. The thing is, at the time I stopped collecting, it was probably a good time to stop collecting because, again, comic book stories begin to get stale yet again. Now, there have been some good comic book stories to come out since then. I'd say War of the Realms for Marvel, great. Dark Knight's Metal for DC, excellent. There's other storylines, New 52, but they do a lot of reboots, like constant reboots. It seems like they can't get a pool of good talent. I think the main reason is what's been happening is a lot of these comic book companies are pushing ideology instead of crafting good stories. Now, to some degree, everyone's ideology is going to creep into their creative process. I think it's almost inevitable to some point. And if it happens organically, I can take that. When it feels forced, like I'm going to insert this here for this ideological message to push to people. I am a believer. I am a Christian. If I created a comic book for the sole purpose of being a Christian comic book, then you would have to expect those ideas to permeate through that comic book. If I created a comic book for the average person, now again, to some degree, your ideas are going to permeate your creative space. There's really not a way to fully get around that, in my opinion. Here's the deal, though. I think if I did it in a way where I was shoving my ideas on people, like it wasn't organic, because Christianity, the Bible, the Lord Jesus Christ is my life, those things would come out in my creative process. That would happen organically. It wouldn't be a matter of me shoving my ideas down your throat. And I think you would get that sense. The problem that Marvel and DC have had for probably the past maybe 15 years, maybe more, maybe in a span where I kind of fell away from reading comic books, they had this issue, but definitely now there's forced ideas shoved into comic books, and it really is terrible. It's so terrible that when a good comic book story comes out, automatically you know, oh yeah, this is different. This comic book story right here is different from these other stories I'm hearing. You're not seeing that in many modern comic books from the big names. I've never been in a Dark Horse, so I can't speak to Dark Horse and IDW. I was never really a huge fan of IDW or Dark Horse, so I can't speak to those. I know Image to some degree, maybe not to the degree of Marvel and DC, but Marvel and DC definitely 100% pushing, shoving agendas. It's not just people creating stories organically, inspirational comic book storytelling. That's not it. And the stories are hard to follow, jumps all over the place. There's always reboots. It really makes for a terrible experience. If I was a new collector, I would be really confused as to where to even jump in. It's like playing double dutch. Like, I don't even know where to begin. There's so many different reiterations and reboots. And okay, where do I start here? And how do I start? And where does this story begin? And where does that story begin? They've really made it almost impossible to follow. And I kind of understand they've been out for so many years. I think Marvel's been around since like the 40s or something like that, different iterations, maybe even the 30s. And so, and DC, I think around the same time. They're old. They're really old. So I get it. There's only so much catching up you can do. But here's the problem. When you continually reboot the comic books and you continually mix match all these storylines and there's no continuity, this makes following comic books very hard, right? But most people could probably put up with that. But then when you have ideas being shoved down your throat and it's not organic, that's the point where you're like, all right, I'm off the reservation. I'm done. I am completely checked out. I want nothing to do with this anymore. And I think that's happened to a lot of people. I want to go to this website. If you follow Eric July, he's a libertarian YouTuber, comic enthusiast that started his own comic book company. I ordered the first issue and I'm actually excited about this. It's called the Rippaverse. I want to show you a little bit of what he has going on. Now, first of all, there's a lot of people who have hated on his endeavor. A lot of people said he would never get this done. He wasn't going to go through with it. This is what I want to show you. Let me see if I can get to it where you can view the campaign, because the amount of money he has raised, that amount right there, 1.5 million, he raised that in, I think it's been 3 days. 1.5 million the first day. Like, people are enthusiastic about this thing. This is really something unique. And the way he's going about doing this really has me excited. As a comic book geek, I'm all in. He even has a code of ethics. Let's read through his code of ethics. I'm not going to read through the whole thing. You can go to the website. It's rippaverse, rippaverse.com. The Rippaverse ethic: respect the customer, canon and continuity, a comprehensive timeline. Simple stuff. Let's read a little bit about what he says in Respect the Customer. We want you invested in this brand and everything that comes from it. Rippaverse Comics is not entitled to your money, and we must earn your support. It is on us as the creators to produce something that you find of value and can remain invested in. It's impossible to please everybody. That is a fact. But we hope there's a book or character that you look forward to keeping up with. The success of this company will be largely dictated by our ability to keep the customers interested and satisfied. We are not oblivious to this. Respect goes both ways, and we will honor our side of the deal. Yo, that's respectable. A comic book company that has decided, yo, the customers matter. These are the people buying the books. So clearly the customers matter, right? You would think this be obvious, but you know what? It's not. It's actually not. If you still follow DC and Marvel, like myself, you will know that finding a good comic book nowadays, it's hard. It's hard. I go to the comic book store not as often as I was about for the past, I'd say 5 years. I might go once a month, once or twice a month, to look and see if I can find something. Look, I'm big on art. I'm gonna tell you one thing that I found in the comic book industry right now, in the mainstream comic book industry. I used to draw when I was younger. Me and my cousin were actually going to start our own comic book company. I always say, had we had access to what kids have access to nowadays, we might have actually started our own comic book company. But me and my cousin used to check out this book from the library. I would check it out and he would check it out. I feel sorry for the kids that wanted that book because they would never get it. It was called How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. Me and him actually got very good at our pencil game. He was a lot better than me, but we were both good, and we had every intention on starting a comic book company. The reason I say that is, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say I'm actually invested in the sense that I know a little bit about art. I'm not oblivious to this. I haven't drawn anything in a little bit, but I still know enough about art to know good comic book art when I see it. People like Jim Lee, who, in my opinion, is the king of comic book art. You can look at any cover and you know it was a Jim Lee cover. But a lot of comic book artists that are being celebrated in Marvel and DC, I'm going to keep it real with you. Some of them aren't great. They're not terrible, but there's some artists that DC and Marvel needs to put on a back burner and say, okay, get some practice in. We're going to give you some lower level books to practice on, something that's not necessarily selling well, to get your pencil game up and work your way into actually being a good artist. Because some of these people that they put on their major books, I'm like, bruh, this art is terrible. Terrible in the sense that, yo, this is what you offer to me. An average general run-of-the-mill artist can produce this. This is not what I want if I'm going to be spending my money on it. I want somebody that is really invested and putting time into quality art, and that's not what you're getting from Marvel and DC. And also the storylines. Man, they have pushed so much of an agenda that they abandoned storyline. As I said, everybody has their leaning. Everyone has their leaning. And to some degree, your leaning is going to shine in your creative process. There's no getting around that. But again, if it happens organically, it's not you shoving this down my throat. These are just your ideas, and your ideas are formed out, are an outgrowth of your ideology. I expect that. I can understand it. It's got to be organic. So I want to play this video and just let you hear some of what Eric July has to say about his comic book company and his endeavor. Pretty exciting stuff. I'm going to fast forward just a little bit. It's going to show a little bit of the art. Yo, this looks good. I'm super excited. Good art.
ISOM issue number 1 is the first book released through Rippaverse Publishing, which makes it extremely significant. Though this is ISOM's self-titled book, it also serves as a launching pad for our entire universe. This 96-pager was written by myself, Eric.
So here's another thing. Listening to him talk on his YouTube channel, I think it's Young Ripper 59 is his YouTube channel. Just look up Eric July. He said he wants to do long form comics. He doesn't want to do the little 20-page comic books. He wants all his comic books. He wants to be like 96 pages plus. I'm like, yo, I am with that. I am with that. Do you know how many times I've read a comic book story and you get to the end and you're like, yo, they could have made this a little bit longer, but they drag it out for months and months and months. And it takes you so long to get through it. Yo, I like this. I like what he's doing.
July, the pencil and ink work was done by the great Cliff Richards, and the color work was done by Gabe El Taib, 2 comic book veterans. This book is part 1 of the ill-advised arc, and it follows Avery Silman, who lives right outside of Flores Park, Texas, the place where he was born and raised. Now, Avery is what is known as an except, which is what common folk in this area call special people. Years ago, shortly after he got his abilities, Avery decided to become a hero of sorts.
You see what he's doing? He's keeping it basic while making it interesting. He's not giving you a whole bunch of ideology, special people, special abilities, a storyline based around that. Wow, what a concept.
And adopted the moniker ISOM. But a certain event had him come to the realization that this life wasn't for him. So now he lives on his own ranch outside of the big city. One day, Avery gets a call from his sister Altona. She wants him to visit his old buddy because of...
Now I'm gonna pause because I want to move ahead. I want you to hear what he says about his idea as far as creating a comic book and what he wants for the fans. So excuse me as I jump around a little bit.
Avery, when they were, we do what it takes to... is a man that you do other excepts, such as Sans Pass with one of these characters. You can see why Tano. How does this meeting, how does this impact the psyche of Avery, who went from a hero to a now blue-collar civilian? These are all questions that will be answered in ISOM issue number 1, which you can now pre-order at rippaverse.com, along with some other limited edition merchandise items that will give you some more insight on the characters, such as...
I like the way he did that.
Earth, a place with such interesting
So I thought he
beings.
covered this in this
Like
video.
many other
He might
planets
not have,
throughout
so
the
I'm gonna
cosmos,
mention it if he
their
didn't.
subjects have needless squabbles. But from those conflicts, I've discovered some creatures that could be of great use to our efforts. I'm not quite ready for the selection, but after many patient years, I feel it is time for more thorough documentation. This city is where we begin.
Okay, so it wasn't in that video. It might be on his YouTube page. On his YouTube page, I believe he has stated that even though he is a libertarian, he is not going to push that idea and ideology on his fans. Now, again, I understand it is impossible for his leanings not to show up in the creative process, but I understand what he's saying. His point is not to shove this on you. It's just to create a good story. George Lucas has ideas, has ideologies. But when the first time I saw Star Wars, even now when I go back and watch it, you can see little subtle things where ideologies come through, but that's not the focus. That's just naturally part of that creative process. He's just giving you something you want. And I honestly believe that's what's happening right here. He's giving you something you want. And I would like to give a round of applause for Eric July and the Rippaverse. I'm definitely with you, homie. I am waiting for this. waiting for this. I already ordered mines. I cannot wait for this joint to come in. I can't wait to get my hands on this first book and read it. If I can, if God allows, I'm going to order every book he comes out with. This is actually exciting, getting in on the start of something. When Image Comics first started, of course, I was young, didn't have a job, living with mom at home. And whenever I got some loose change, I would buy comic books. But being able, as an adult, being able to start out with something like this from ground zero and being able to read it, and this is what I like. He didn't like what he was seeing in the comic book world. So what did he do? He said, you know what? I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to create something. And you know what I did? I said, you know what, homie? I support that. And I can't wait. When I tell you I can't wait to see this, man, I didn't know when he was going to release this. He had been talking about it. I'd kind of been loosely following this for a while. And when I saw this, I was like, oh, this is about to get so good. I honestly think he has the potential to take on Marvel and DC, in my opinion. I really do. I could be mistaken in thinking that. I don't think I am. I honestly think he has the potential and the ability to take on Marvel and DC heavily. The fact that he was able to raise $1.5 million. And here's the thing. He didn't use Indiegogo or anything like that. This is all his own endeavor. The raising of the money this is my estimation. Just listening to him talk. This is what I think he's going to do. When he comes out with a book, as people purchase, those books will go to print and be shipped out. I think that's kind of the model he's going with. And did you look at his goal versus how much he raised? That's another thing. Let me go back. I'm gonna go back to the website because I just clicked off. I'm excited. If you couldn't tell, he's excited, and I'm excited for him. So the campaign goal was $100,000. This cat raised $1.5 million in 3 days. That is mind-boggling. Actually, yeah, about 3 days. Because the campaign started, you could start pre-ordering on Monday. By the time Monday was done, he was at like 900,000 or something like that. Pretty much he was at $1 million. And 1.5 million so far throughout the week. This is great. This is great. I am excited. I cannot wait for this comic to come out. I'm trying to find... Hold on. I'm going on YouTube. I want to find this video so I can play for you something he said about the comic book. Okay, here it is. Here it is right here. I'm gonna go back to this. Oh, I hit the wrong thing. Anyway, so I'm back on. This is his YouTube channel, Young Rippa 59. So I want you to hear what he has to say about Rippaverse comics.
Rippaverse. The Rippaverse is the result of a comic book lifer that wanted to be a part of the solution instead of always griping about the problem. Now, don't get me wrong, this was always a part of my aspirations. However, the current climate certainly sped things up. You've watched some of your favorite comic book characters be bastardized to the point to where they're...
And this is a fact. This is for everybody who is a comic book geek. You know, comic books are being destroyed. You see, I got on my Wolverine t-shirt. I love comic books. I grew up on comic books, but comic books are being destroyed and burned to the ground as far as storylines.
completely unrecognizable. They're just used as career stepping stones for a lot of writers that don't care about the lore. Some even despise their fans. Those are people that just want to tell stories that represent their social political views, even if they don't make sense for the characters that they're writing. And of course, these mega corporations that control these properties don't exactly make it easy for you to get in and understand what's canon. So maybe it's time for something new.
This is true. It is time for something new.
We are a comic book company first and foremost that will never be forgotten no matter how big this venture gets. And we are guided by a set of principles known as the rippaverse ethic. You will find this on a page in every single book that we release, and it's a set of standards that we certainly want you to hold us to. There are three main things that we will always emphasize. Number one, respect the customer. We aren't owed your dollar, but we love to have you as long-time support.
You see, this is what a lot of businesses today have missed. It's not that the customers are always right, because that's not true. But if you're trying to get my money, then respect the customer. You're going to have customers. Now, when I say respect the customer, I'm not saying cater to the customer in a sense that, let's say if he had a customer that is left wing, or a customer that is right wing, or a customer that is libertarian, and they're like, we want these ideas in a book. Nah, not like that. But respect the customer in the sense that, look, you know what the book is about. We're going to be consistent with our story, and hopefully we produce a good enough story to earn your money. And I like that.
Orders, it's going to be up to us to keep you interested and invested. Now, anytime there's passion involved, there's going to be those conflicts, but we'll respect you. So as long as you respect us, it's all about reciprocity. Our second point of emphasis is canon and continuity. This is an ever-expanding universe. There's going to be many of characters that will be introduced, but when you buy a book,
canon and continuity matters, because if you've ever been invested in a story and someone new comes in, or something new comes in, and they completely destroy the story, you want to talk about something that can really annoy you and make you mad. That it really does get to the point where you're like, why you even create a story if you were just going to rip it apart every other day? It's annoying.
Book from us, you own a piece of history. It matters. These events will not be erased by way of time travel or some multiversal aspect. And number three,
that's another thing. Time travel and multiverse in comic books has been a crutch for lazy writing. Writers that don't want to just spend the time in the creative process to fix things. Everything is fixed with time travel and multiverse. And at some point, that does get annoying.
A comprehensive timeline. No matter when you jump into this space, we want to make it easy for you to get caught up on some characters that you're interested in. So we're going to keep the reboots to a minimum.
That is a big plus for comic book fans.
Don't worry, we know that picking up the pieces is part of the fun, so we're not going to exactly hold your hand. And while I personally value liberty, we're not going to beat you over the head.
This is what I like the most right here.
And with on-the-nose current politics and current narratives that will completely contradict what it is that we're trying to do here. So whether you're into our main character in our first book, Isum, or you're into Yaira, or you're interested in all of them, will certainly have you as a customer. Your ethnic background or genetic makeup is wholly irrelevant to us.
That right there is the biggest shot across the bow. I just want a good story. I don't care about all the other stuff. And that's the thing that's most annoying about most comic books now.
Now, previously being part of comic book fandoms myself, I understand the importance of them. We'll do our jobs to preserve the sanctity on the business end, and we hope you will help us preserve a more healthy and thriving fandom. If we manage to do that.
So that's it. I just wanted to show you that. I thought that would be interesting. And for those of you out there who are fellow comic book geeks, I hope this gets you as excited as it has gotten me, because I'm definitely ready for something like this.